Welcome to the Common Ground channel, where we're all about regenerative housing communities. And I'm here with Lisa Houghton, who's developing the Rotorua off-grid tiny house village. And we're following her steps along the process of what it means to create a community from scratch, particularly a very innovative community like this, where it is off-grid, it's tiny home, and it's a village. Something that hasn't been done before. So that's what makes this journey exciting, is that we're uncovering it as we go. We are exploring it together. And we've had 2 episodes already. This is the 3rd episode. So we've had the inception. Where did the concept come from to begin with? We've had the more internal, what does it mean to be a leader and creator? And what are those internal qualities and outlook that one must have in order to be able to keep this project going without burning out. And today we're going to be talking about the various aspects of when you think about what's all there to do with developing a housing community, from the finance to the legal to the expertise to do the built environment, all the things that actually need to be taken into consideration. And what order do we do them? There's so many things to do. How do we keep some sort of a semblance of a process and make sure that we are doing everything? So Lisa has actually really thought this through quite nicely and has a lot to say on the topic. So we're going to hear from Lisa what it has been her thought process, how to handle or juggle all the different pieces of developing a new innovative housing community. Welcome, Lisa.
Thanks, Sola. So I'm always about practical. So with these talks, what I really want to do is I want to help inspire people and just validate their process. And so instead of telling you actual like legal entity options and financial strategies you can have, I want to talk about how I came across this massive to-do list and how I prioritized and figured out what I needed to do. Because I think from what I've seen of other people in the startup seat, like I am, is that there's a lot of inertia, and the inertia comes from overwhelm. There's a lot of unknown. You don't know what you don't know. And when you start learning what you don't know, it absolutely can be overwhelming. However, really it's finite. There is an end in sight. And so when I started into the co-housing community, I realized that I needed to absorb as much as I could from every person. Every person was going to bring a different piece of the picture or a different way of looking at the picture. And I honed in on Zola and Robin Ellison. And what I was looking for at the very beginning is I was looking for a border. I was looking for a frame. I wanted to see what there was that I was going to have to touch on, learn about, make decisions about, and factor into my picture. So what I'm talking about, Zola's got a gorgeous slide, which we can show you. So what I'm talking about here is what I'm calling the nuts and bolts. So it's things like your legal entity, your financial agreements, who you're going to have to partner with. So there'll be people like counsel, there'll be consultants, but then there'll be your own core and your own members. And then looking at your community, because the moment you start coming together to create your co-housing arrangement with people, you're actually starting your community. So you're going to have communication agreements and decision-making consensus processes and conflict resolution processes. And then there's the design side. What is it that you're actually wanting to create? And that has a practical outer, what does it look like? But also an inner, the ethos, the who are you, what are you about, and why are you creating what you want to create? And interestingly, that is the piece that I found the most, it was almost like a starting point for me. So now that I've laid out the scene as to what I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to wade on in. And For me, it's the principle. What is the overarching principle? What are the design principles? What are your ethos? What is the feeling, the atmosphere, the environment that you want to create in your co-housing? Because if you haven't established that, then it's like a ship without an anchor. It's going to be very easy to drift around. And one thing I learned from reading Robin Allison's book, The Co-Housing Handbook, is that in their early days, when they had people coming and people going, which is completely natural for any startup, any co-housing venture, any cooperative venture, is that people would come in and they would want to take it off in a slightly different direction. And if you don't know what your founding, your grounding principle is, your ethos, why you're doing what you're doing, then it's very easy for those little slight deviations to start changing the shape. And sometimes it's a very valid process to go through. And other times has more of a destructive and distracting, kind of dissipating energy quality about it. And so it's having that very clear connection with your principle, value, your ethos, that will help you discern, where does this fit? I know for myself, the way I run any information through my system is I'll listen, and at some stage I'll get quite a clear message from my body, and then I just have to figure out, what does that mean? How does that fit? So yeah, sometimes it might take a day. I've definitely had that when people have come to me and said, oh, what about this? What about that? But it's been my understanding of the ethos and what I'm trying to create that helps me make sense and put in context what I'm coming across. So once I'd established that, and I already knew that I wanted to do tiny house, off-grid, and village, so I had that kind of core package aside, my next step, in tandem with connecting with the co-housing community and learning about what it will take to create a village, because it really is a whole new paradigm. In fact, I'll put this one down and I'll go on into that a little bit more. And Zola and I were just talking about this, and Zola said it's turning the usual development model on its head, and it really is, because a normal developer would have a budget, have an area in mind where they want to develop. They'd find some land, they'd start the negotiation process there, they'd start the negotiation process with council, and they would be basically making all the decisions, all the design, all the defining elements would be in place by the time that land was secured, the resource consent was through, and then poof, off they go. And then the buyer comes in at the very end, and basically the power that they have is they get to swap some cash for keys. And our process is the antithesis. We need the people first. We need the people to come together based, as I said, you need your flame. They need to be attracted to something. So that's your core foundation, your guiding principle, your ethos, and some of the vision, so people know what it is that you're actually trying to create. But in that process, the people are coming together and they're adding to the creation of that village. It's not set in stone, and each person is bringing in their quality, their vision, their preferences. And so what's happening in that process with the people forming even more refined detail of that picture, and that includes the design, the legal entity, the financial agreements, the communication agreements, and just a general kind of culture of connecting and the quality of the relationships, that is actually building trust, and that's building the connection, and that's building the community, because really the next step is money. And if you don't have that connection and that feeling that we're all on the same page, we understand each other, any little red flags have been dealt with and I actually feel good to invest my money, then you're not going anywhere. You haven't got enough collaboration to develop the momentum to build. So I think I covered that one enough. Did I cover that one enough, Sola?
Yeah, I think so. Because we're turning it on its head, we actually need to feel comfortable with the fact that the questions people are going to be asking where they'd normally have an answer, we can actually confidently say, well, that's not the way our process works. We're actually working, from a different angle, and those questions will be answered later. Like, how are you going to finance it? And it might be, from the people themselves, but it might be a combination as well of things. And as you were saying, first, you really need to feel like you can even ask anybody for money first. And how do you feel to say that is then if you've built those relationships. So it's really coming from the financing, whereas normally the developer is a business and can sort of borrow as a business on their reputation or on their other assets. Now you've got people who it's a totally different way of lending or borrowing or making that finance available. So we need to think about that differently, that how do we build those relationships to, as you were saying, free up, get the finance available to get that project started. And that's kind of the same with other factors that are normally developer driven, that they've got their templates and their way to do it. And they've streamlined that. We're really having to figure that out as we go with a bunch of people.
Absolutely. And while, someone like me could develop something to a push play, here's the keys kind of point potentially, I actually don't want to. I don't want to do this on my own. And I don't want to be responsible for every single decision either. I want other people's input and I want to do this together. I feel like that part of the community development is going to be so richly bonding that everyone else that comes after won't have that same, we decided to put that there and wasn't that a great idea, this is really working, that real sense of achievement and satisfaction. So and then from the rest of the development, it kind of starts looking like an ordinary development with the sequence of consultants and consenting and but there's that real difference there of the people actually have to come together and connect first and refine, and in that process you're actually creating your home, and this is the difference. So the other aspect that I ventured into co-housing, and the other aspect was doing a reality check with council, because basically the concept that I've put on the table doesn't have a precedent, and I have 1,000,001 justifications why I think it's a great idea, particularly at this time on the planet when we're just screaming all these issues that this concept seems to tick the boxes for. I needed to do a reality check with my council. So for me, I'm a relationship person. I like to make connections. And I like to feel that I'm connecting with the right people and that we're a team and that we are working together. We're not opposing each other. And miraculously, I ended up meeting someone in council that was in a position to open a door and help me actually start a conversation. So I've had several conversations, and we've got to a point now where we can see that, because, and I had to teach them about this inverted model too, Zola. They were saying, oh, well, you need to get land first, and then we'll have something to work with to figure out, what you can do and what you can't do. It's like, no, that's not how this cooperative thing works. And as soon as you speak the logic behind it, people understand it, but people generally aren't going into a cooperative situation with tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's not in the forefront of their mind. So they were my two starting points. I wanted to do a reality check with council. Could I actually even entertain doing this, because I wasn't going to get people on board until I felt that there was enough of a good rapport and we could have robust conversations. And I got to that place, and it was like, as soon as I got to that place, I developed my website, and I took my flame and I planted it and I built it up a bit. And that was my way. It was like a beacon out into the world. I'd gathered enough from the co-housing community to feel that, okay, I need to, in my initial communication on my website, I need to talk about the legal entity, I need to talk about the design, I need to talk about financial arrangements, and I need to touch on all those questions that are going to bubble up from people. Can I sell, and how do I buy in, how much is it, and addressing the reality. And when I've talked with people, the feedback that I've been given is that my website is very transparent. So basically, I'm not holding any information back. As soon as I've got clarity or understanding about something, out it goes. And my website has developed twice as many pages as what I started with. And there's lots of resources and links so people can educate themselves about the process. So for me, what I wanted to do with the website was give people a chance to try it on for themselves and walk into it and really see if it was for them. So the main thing I want to get across is that while some parts of the picture are very clear, like I've just talked about, learning about cooperative community and getting a feel for the overview, building your foundation relationship starting place, putting your message out into the world, those are pretty straightforward, kind of easy to figure out steps. There's a lot of them, and some of them will be completely new territory. So what I decided to do was I decided to prioritize. I figured out what my strengths are, what can I actually embellish, what can I fill out, what am I happy to go and learn about, who are my connections, who do I know. Often I would ask who I'd met, who are these next people that I need to meet. And so I was just pulling in contacts all the time. And what I decided was there were some areas that not interested, not my area of specialty. And actually, I realized I didn't actually need to make definitive decisions. I didn't need to get down to nitty gritty yet. I could just park it at a certain level. So there will be things that you will need to get down to nitty gritty. There will be things that you actually can't. For example, on my website, what I've done is I've done a timeline, and I've talked about where the process is at, because one of the main things people are coming to me wanting to know is what's the cost. Well, Simone down in Takaka and their co-housing venture there, they've got a cost. They've done the resource pre-approval, they've done the planning, they've done the feasibility, they've done the budget, they've got the design, it's locked in, so they actually have a cost. So their situation, it's worked out that they've put all these pieces in place, and that's where they're at. My particular model isn't like that at all. It's a bit more amorphous. It's definitely got an equation, and I've got a budget in mind, but until we get to a certain point and I've spelt out that in the timeline, and I won't actually have a price. So there'll be things you will be able to get down to, things that you'll have to park, but at least in your parking, you'll be able to be transparent and clear with. And there will be things that can just simply wait till later. Wait till you've got your core working group together and people can take jobs on and actually do the research and bring it back to the group. So
yeah, and what I'm finding is there's actually layers of affordability that are to be uncovered, and it's actually there's different pieces that can be put together which lend to different types of affordability. So I think that can be a whole nother topic for us to discuss, because people want to know a price, and yet there's actually a lot of variables that can be brought in, things that people don't even know exist yet, or that maybe even the government is busy putting into place now that we're finding out is available. like progressive home ownership. Whether that applies to tiny homes or not, I'm not sure. But, you know, and those are the things we need to figure out is we actually want to have an affordable. So what are the mechanisms that exist or that could exist that we could lobby for that allow us to have that affordability?
And I can dovetail in alongside you there with some of the design features that have an affordability element into them. So absolutely, let's talk about that another time. All right, gang. Well, I think that just gives you a little feel. I just wanted to take the overwhelm factor away, tell you that there is a finite amount of things that are the big main chunky topics that you're going to have to fill out. You don't have to fill them all out at once, but you do need to familiarize yourself with them. And from the new paradigm, from the cooperative housing side. So you are absolutely going to have to dive into that world and do some homework. Otherwise, you're just going to model yourself on the developer and the individual. And yeah, you'll be trying to get somewhere, but you'll be driving in another direction. And that, yeah, there will be areas that you'll flourish in, fluff them out, but there'll be areas that you will actually need to establish, i.e. your core principle, your vision, you know, what it actually is looking like, what are you trying to create, and then your mean of communication out into the world so that people can learn about you and actually start the process of inquiry for themselves.
And that's what people get inspired to come on board, you know, to see themselves as a collaborator rather than as a recipient. That's where people have their energy to contribute, where they feel like, yeah, this is something totally that aligns and they can give. And that's where, you know, you have your strengths and they feel like, oh, well, I've got this strength to play. I'll contribute that. And so that's the beauty of having a good vision and a good process that honors people's contributions.
That's a really good point, Zola, because it is about the people coming together. It's not about one person's idea, and that's what makes it and shapes it and flavors it. Yeah, cool. All right, well, next time we're gonna go a little bit more inward again. We're doing outward then inward. So next time we're going to be looking at communication and how that fits into the puzzle.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you so much, Lisa, for your time, allowing us to follow your journey. It is really exciting. So we look forward to having everyone back for the next episode.
Awesome. Thanks, Sola. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.